I'm CK. Today we've got another module from Tesseract Modular. We've done some good modules from them in the past. This is their Stonk, and I want to read what the features are because you don't want to just get hung up on one thing. First off, it's a joystick controller, 2 channels of CV and 2 of audio. CV generator, looper, and audio processor. It's got 2 ins and outs, 2 CV in and out, 2 audio in and out, 2 CV in and out, 2 extra CV outputs, 12 buttons, CV and audio looper, 2 minutes and 30 seconds per channel, which is nice, an LFO, a Euclidean envelope generator, multi-mode filter, stereo reverb, wave folder, and a VCA, all in one unit. Number 1, that's going to be complicated. Number 2, that's pretty neat, because I think it's only about 12U wide, but I'm not certain about that. I'll measure it later. So, looks like it'll probably be a complicated kind of build, but when we get done, looks like we'll have a really powerful unit. Looking forward to it. And I hope you enjoy the video. The box, picked it up from thonk.co.uk, as I do most of my modules. These folks are out of Sevilla, Spain, and they have the right contact information if you need guidance. Let's open her up. We got sticker and power cable. I think I already have one of their stickers. Here's some push button lighted switches, which are cool. Bunch of jacks with the panel nuts already taken off, which I appreciate. Pin headers. In here, I assume, I'm going to make a guess that this is the joystick assembly. And it is. That's a beefy joystick. Wow. I'm going to pull it out just for a second. Take the rim off it. Oh no, that's a good, stiff joystick. No, that's nice. It looks like you may be able to calibrate it. You can see you can move this slightly. I think it's calibratable. Made August 2023 for that part. I don't know who it's from, actually. I don't see a manufacturer name on it. That's interesting. Put this back in here so I don't separate the parts, because there's particular screws that will mount that. So we'll set that to the side for a while. In here we've got a daughter board of some type or other. Electra Smith, Daisy, I guess. Oh, it's a Teensy 3.2. There we go. Let's look at the front panel just for a minute here. Oh, get everything out of the box and get the box ready for recycling. This is just a piece of paper. And we'll look at the front panel here and hold it the correct way around, buddy. So the joystick will go in here, and then we've got record, clock. This looks like it may be setting up for the looper. I'll have to read more about that later. Then we've got record for the looper, I'm going to assume. A couple of things here. I don't know. Speaking of which, oh, there it is. I was wondering where the circuit board was. Circuit board is half a circuit board because the joystick takes up the other part. So let me get the circuit board out so we can get a better understanding of what some of this stuff would be. And as you'll notice, it's mostly surface mount pre-installed. Oh my. These electrolytic caps got very dented. I hope they work. But they got dented. We shall see whether they are good. I do not have spares of these. Oh well. So there's a whole bunch of jacks here. Then we've got the switches. And we've got 1, 2, left, right, something, something, don't know. LFO, envelope, input, loop, those are switches. Then there's a shift button to fire off frequency, slope, amplitude, and offset. So that looks interesting, but again, I'm now really worried about these electrolytic caps because they're very beat up. Then we've got pin headers and spacers and some jumper wire that's probably going to connect the joystick to the board. Yeah, it looks like we've got X and Y coming in on these two sets of 3. And I'm only seeing, so on the front side 1 is picked up, on the back side 2 is picked up. It looks like 3, the third input, is not used on this. And yeah, a bunch of surface mount chips and components that we'll sort out later, if I can get over my apprehension about these. Let me see if you normally can't do capacitor testing in circuit, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. Set my mode to capacitance. These are my little tweezer extensions for testing surface mount stuff. It's saying 10 microfarad, 11.8 microfarad, and these are rated at 10. I may have the leads backward on that one. And that's coming in at 11 also, so maybe they're good after all. So we're going to go with the assumption that I don't have to replace those right off the bat and press on. So we'll get the soldering iron heated up and start putting this beast together. There's a build guide for this on the Tesseract website, easy to find. And as you saw, there's not a lot of componentry to do. The soldering's mainly just switches and jacks and the Etsy daughter board. Teensy daughter board. But one thing we are going to do is we don't want the joystick to be springy. We don't want it to return to center, so they describe what you want to do. First, we're going to take the rubber cover off the joystick here, because the rubber cover will cause it to come back to center. And it won't quite pull off, so we're going to have to cut it. And let me grab something to cut it with. Oh, don't fall down. Come on. I'm reaching in here and cutting the silicone rubber off. There we go. And that pulls right off. You know, this is one of those things that in my compulsiveness I want to save just in case I'll need it sometime, but I'm never going to need this. Wait, I'll save it. I'll throw it under the workbench. Maybe I'll use it sometime. No, I won't, but maybe I will. No, I guess I don't. Okay, I think what they want us to do, and I'm sorry, it's not really clear, so I am going to grab that thing back out. Found it again. And I think what he's trying to say here is we just want to release some of the tension on this, so we're going to cut the inner part where it grips the joystick, then we can put it back on, and as we move around, the rubber cover shouldn't interfere too much. That's what we're going to go with. And now what we're going to do is we're going to mount it on the front panel. And I'm trying to figure out exactly how this will go. And the x-axis will go up. Make sure I've got that right. Yeah, I do. Trying to get it aligned. Oh. There are two sets of holes in the joystick. Just so you don't get confused like I was just confused. There's holes here and holes here. So you're going to be using the outer holes on this. And we'll put this back on. Does that go under? Again, it's really hard to tell. Joystick, front panel, rubber cover, ring. That's what he says. So that's what we'll do. Let me see if I can get this rubber, I want to get the ring installed inside, the rubber installed inside the ring before I go any further. I'm going to trim this a little bit more. It's not necessarily the prettiest job of cutting that I've ever done, but it's workable. So we're going to go like so. Put that. That should be good. Yeah. Now we're going to take the screws. And we'll do them one at a time, of course, because I want to get one started to get our indexing right. Outer hole. I'm not going to tighten this, I'm just getting it close. Okay, now see where the other holes fit. This is wacky. Now that's offset. I'm sorry, I'm offset now. This is not... I don't know what's going on here. I don't understand this. Maybe I do want to go, I want to go on that. I'm sorry, I've got to take this back apart because it came out again. There are too many holes. So what if I go in this hole? Does that work better, guys? I think that will work better. And I know the rubber bellows came loose again. I don't care at this point. Just trying to get the screw alignment right. Yeah, that's the way it is. So I don't know what these holes are for. I mean, these two holes in particular, maybe they occasionally get a different size joystick. I don't know. but it confuses the heck out of me. Okay, it's screwed down now. Don't put your screwdriver away yet, because next we're going to take the back off. Let me get a parts tray. Because we got to pull the return springs, the centering springs. Cover comes off, and we've got these two centering springs in here. Let me get some needle nose pliers. We should be able to get them off pretty easily. There's one. There's two. So now it doesn't return. It goes where you set it and stays. And that's what we want for this. Now put the cover back on. And I put the thing on back. Oh, no, I didn't. This thing is printed on both sides. Huh. I just noticed that right now, when I thought I had made a mistake. But I was sure I hadn't made a mistake, and I didn't. They just printed the front panel on both sides. It's kind of a little bit of extra expense for no real benefit. And there's that. Now we've got the front panel with the joystick in place. Now we can go to the next piece, which will be adding the teensy board to the main board. And we're going to get our pin headers. Got two kinds of pin headers. We got the long ones, which will connect the teensy board where all the intelligence of this project is. And we've got the other 2x5, which is the power connector header. I'll do that first, just to get it out of the way. And as is typical, I'll just kind of roughly solder one pin, take a look. It's all flat. Now we'll do the pin headers. And put the female on this side just because, no particular reason why. You could do it either way, really. And what I'm actually going to do is get those on there. Come on, go in there, guys. And push the male pin headers on it, because we want to make sure everything gets aligned properly. We will be separating them again in a little bit, because we don't want, this is not for final, because we still got buttons and so on. I don't know why that's not going in there. There we go. I'm just putting it together like this so we can make our solder connections perfectly aligned. I mean our pin connections, solder connections are. That goes like that. Now we'll get the teensy board out of here. And we will put it on. Pin 1 is here, pin 1 is here. So that's the way it's going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder all these pins, and I'm going to flip the board over and do the other pins, and that will make sure everything is aligned. So when we take it back off so we can do the front panel components, when we put it back on, we know it'll go together well. Now, of course, be very careful when you're soldering this. As you can see, these 4 pins are right next to the pins on that IC, and careless soldering could mean disaster if you happen to hit those. Now we're going to do a pin here. Before we do the rest of the pins, I'm going to take a look, make sure it's all flat, and it is. Now we can do the rest of the pins. And that are the teensy board connections. Now I'm going to pull the teensy back off because we've got some things we've got to put in there later. I'm going to lever this a little bit with my pointy thing so I don't damage anything. And you can see what I did. I put one female on one side, one male on the other side, just to show you that it doesn't matter which side it goes on. So we'll set that aside for right now. Now we're going to connect, I'm getting my head in the shot. Now we're going to connect the joystick to the board. And we're going to use this wire, and we're going to cut it in half. Actually, I don't know if we can. Do I have enough room here? How far back is that going to go? I'm going to do something. I'm going to grab a jack. I'm going to grab 2 jacks, actually. Actually, I'm going to grab, I'll just grab 2 jacks. I'm going to put them on the board at opposite corners. I'm not soldering them. They're just going to be my positioning guide so I can see how far out this stands when it's installed. So it'll be about like so. And I've got this joystick sticking out. That's a bit of a pain. I can probably do that. So that gives us a real good idea of how far we have to take the wires, because we've got the board at the right distance from the front panel. So for this one, I can go cut it right here. Does that leave me enough? Leaves me plenty. I'm going to unravel these wires a little bit more than one would necessarily need to, but it's only because my Nipexes need a little more depth, and I don't want to grab another pair of wire cutters. I'm going to twist and tin these. So that will be for the Y axis. Actually, they had trimmed it back a lot further than me. Maybe they use Nipexes in their shop too. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the overhead camera, and the camera's timed out. They only record for 30 minutes without timing out. So again, I've got the X and the Y axis wires soldered. I'll be soldering them onto the joystick itself once we get the board mounted, which means after we get all the switches and knobs on. I just feel that's a better way to do it. So now we're going to do the switches, and they've got, let me see if I have any chance of showing you this. I'm going to zoom in here. Yeah, you can see it. Hold on one sec. Right here, there's a little plastic index pin, and that goes in this center hole. So that tells, I'm sorry, now I'll zoom back out so you can see what I'm talking about there. On the PCB, there's a center hole, and that's where that plastic index pin will go, so you don't have to guess as to what the orientation will be. So I'll put all 12 of these switches on, which will be a little bit of pain because these legs are a little bit spicy to deal with, so I'm actually going to go from the center outwards. See, I already bent that one. There we go. They're a little tricky, but just take your time, and I'll put all the rest of them on. I'll do this in fast motion or fast playback. And there they all are. They're a little tricky to put in, but not too bad. And hopefully you can see that's why I didn't want to have this soldered on, because I would have been trying to manipulate both things at the same time, and that would not have been pleasant. So next we'll put all the jacks on, and that is straightforward. Even though they do share ground pins. So just don't look for the extra component hole. Each pair of jacks share a grounding pin. And there's that. The jacks and the grounding pins are on. Now, what was I going to do? I'm going to put the spacers on. Because that will allow me to mount it to the board more easily. Come on, screw, come out of the bag. Now we'll put the board on. I mean the front panel on. And these switches, oh, I'm in the wrong row. That's why. Just want to make sure they're all pretty much aligned. So the jacks are all aligned. Now we just gotta manipulate the switches into their holes, which is a little bit of a pain. There we go. Now they're all through, and to make sure I don't mess anything up, I'll take the screws that go on the other end of the spacers. Screw them down. That one. And this one. Okay, that one's a... I didn't notice that one of these is a Allen head and the other's cross tip. I didn't notice it on the other one because it didn't make any difference. So I'll just leave that there for a moment. Actually, let me go get the right side down wrench for that. So I guess to be neat, we'll put the Allen head button screws on the top and the cross tips on the bottom. No real reason for that other than I feel like it. Check all the switches to make sure they are interference free, and they are. Now there'll be a whole bunch of soldering. What I'll do first before I solder all this, I'll solder these wires onto the potentiometers on the joystick. So green goes outside. Barrett locking tweezers. To hold that in place for myself. Actually, I wanted to have a little. Let me do this. I'll lock it onto that. It gives me some good solder surface. yellow in the middle. Shouldn't need my locking tweezers for this now that the green wire is locked in. And the orange wire. I could trim off that excess, but I'm not gonna. It's not gonna hit. I will. Never mind. And then we're going to want to pull these wires way back. In fact, you may even want to bend the post down a little bit to get that teensy board to go right in on those pin headers. But now we got to solder all these connections. And actually we've got a little flex here, so I'm going to do something else. I'm going to get my little clamp. And I'm going to clamp right here. And I'm going to solder this socket and I'm going to put the panel nut on there too. Take the clamp off and put the panel nut on. Now I'll do the same on the other side because there's a little flex on that one too. Even though that's a little tougher because there's a surface mount transistor right there. There, now everything's flat, and I can solder all these connections. Of course, you don't have a lot of room to work on in here, but that's fine. Double checking everything. So I'm going to do that, but not right now because I got to go in and feed the cats. They're starting to scratch at the door. Now we're ready to solder all this stuff, so let me pull myself a new long strand of solder because we're going to be using a lot. And again, the key thing here when you're soldering this up is there's a whole bunch of surface mount around the pins you're going to be soldering. So just be very, very careful with your soldering iron. And as usual, as I solder this up, I will speed the video up, and I'll probably cut some of it out too. And all the connections are now soldered. I will point out one thing though, and I'll zoom the camera in a little bit for this. Right here with the switches, there's a plated pad all the way along. That's where the plastic peg goes, the centering index peg we talked about, or I demonstrated a little earlier. Don't solder those. They probably shouldn't have plated them, but they did. Not a big deal. But don't get confused and say, where's the lead coming through there? I can't see it. Well, there ain't supposed to be one, because that's where the plastic index pin is. Now the next thing is we will put the, what is this thing doing? We will put the teensy board back on, and with the USB connector on this side. There, that's in place. Now there's no knobs to put on, but we do have the panel nuts for the jacks, so I'll slide. Get our power cable out. And then we look and we see clear indication of where the red stripe needs to go. And we put the connector on, and there we go. That's it. Pretty straightforward build. The only challenging bits are these switches, getting them through and then soldering them because they're so close to some other things. But other than that, pretty straightforward kit. Went together pretty quickly. Oh no. That input switch is not... I thought I had checked all of them. Golly gosh. See what I can do here. I have to take this back apart because that input switch is acting up. That's a bit of a pain. So it does click when I pull the panel nuts off. It's only when I bring it down that it stops clicking. I don't see anything obviously wrong with it. But when I go flat, I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put some washers behind those sockets. Let me get some more stuff here. First I'll loosen these two screws. And see if I take this off, if I can see any particular out of shapeness. So that's this one. And it sure looks the same as the others. It's not tilted up any further. Again, it's only when I flatten that. Well, okay, now it's acting normal. Maybe it just needed to be convinced of the errors of its ways. I'm going to put this screw back in. Nope. That's binding it right there when I put that screw, when I tighten that screw up. Yeah, as soon as I bring that fully forward. Well, I don't think I will then. I'll get it to a point that maybe I could washer that one. I think I'll put a washer in there. Let's see what I got for small washers. If I got a handy one right in here. I think this one will work. Got a little lock washer that probably will give me the spacing I'm talking about. Pull this off for a second. Put this, I hope the diameter is big enough. Yeah, it is. this again. Okay. Okay, that seems to have given me enough. It gave me maybe a millimeter more, and everything seems to be hunky-dory now. And I don't mean the Bowie album. Let's see how much I can tighten this. Okay, next test is to do the panel nuts above it in the same row. Okay, everything clicks now. The holes for these switch heads are obviously very close tolerance, but that's the way it looks. That's the front, the side, the back, the other side, the top, and the bottom. Now I'm going to do two things. One thing, I'm going to put it in the rack. The other thing is I'm actually going to read up about how this works with the ability to shift and use buttons for 2 different or 3 different things, and the looper. I want to figure out exactly what's going on here. So that will be what you'll see in one cross dissolve OA. Okay, we're in the rack, and as you can see, it's already on because I will admit I was unclear on how some of it worked. So I wanted to get in here and at least have a halfway competent demo. So let's start with the audio side, and I'll bring up the volume a little bit. I'll turn up my sequencer a little bit. Now that's coming in on the L side, and I've got the this button pressed here, which is going to give us amplitude. Oh, I'm sorry, filtering. If you listen. That's on this one. Horizontal. Let's go over to here. Okay, I'm sorry, I've got some reverb in there too. This should be all reverb. That's the envelope. Adds a little LFO. I thought that was, I'm sorry, I'm still getting used to this. Reverb is under Freak. There it is. There we go. Let me slow the sequence down. You can hear some reverb in there. And then this should go back to filter. Then this should be filter up and down, I believe. And this is the LFO speed. Then the envelope is a Euclidean patterned envelope and VCA kind of. Then input is amplitude. So that's what we're doing there. We're doing, and again, there's a lot to play with here. Now, I'll go quickly back over to here, which is the CV, and I'll bring up the scope. And you can see as I move up and down for the CV channels, horizontal is amplitude X and Y. You can see it changing. Which, I'm trying to remember which LFO this is. This is LFO 4. Let me turn that up a little bit more. So you can change the shape of the LFO signal. And if I go to that on the CV, what am I getting there? That's frequency. So that changes the frequency. See the way it's changing the frequency that's coming in? So you can modify your CV forms very well. Envelope will then do Euclidean pattern. I don't know what that's going to do. Okay, it tilted it's tilting the waveform now. See how it's bending back and forward? Even though I made that shorter. Let me see if I can do it the other way. There you go. See, I'm changing the slope back and forth, which is pretty neat. And then we'll do input, and that should just change the amplitude. I don't know, it's still doing the same thing. Again, I'm not 100% sure what's going on with this thing, because I'm not that, it's smarter than me, which is not hard. So that flattens it out when I'm on horizontal, and that brings it back to normal. If I go to vertical, and you can do multiple things at a time. I'm just not going to do that right now. The one other thing I'm going to do is the loop. I'm going to pull the, I'm taking the scope off the screen, and I'm going to pull the inputs for that out. Just because I don't want to have that messing with me right now. Now let me see what I'm doing here. So now we're back, and there you can hear the reverb really clearly here. Let me slow the... It's a good reverb. Now I'm going to try the looper. So we press record, and the next clock will record it. So we'll stop that. Now it's playing it back, and I'm going to disconnect the input. And as you can see, there's no input now, so it's just playing from the loop. I know I can do something more with it, but I can't figure it out right now. I think I have to press both at once. But again, that's the loop. And if I want to put my input back in, and so on and so forth. Again, I'm not very good at this right now because it's a somewhat complex unit, and I don't want to spend the whole time trying to learn it and demo it, but that's what it does. You know, you could saw what it did for CV inputs. There's a bunch you can do there. You can do offsetting, you can do slope modification and amplitude modification and so on. And you heard the effects from filtering to reverb and other stuff. So it's a very competent unit, a very deep unit. As you saw, it's pretty straightforward to put together, even though I did have some interference problems with that loop button, but putting that little washer in there fixed that, and that's fine. So it's a good unit, but if you get this, you'll have fun with it, but expect to spend a while learning how it works. And I hope you enjoyed the video.